We're poised for a timely start to the last session, and it's going to be slightly shorter than the others. We have 4 speakers. Just reminding those speakers that just over the other side of the screen there, I'll be displaying a green card if 3 minutes has passed, a yellow card if 4 minutes has passed, and the red card is blue. Our first speaker is from UWA, the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, Associate Professor Alison Imden.
So thank you, and thank you for staying till the end. I'll keep this short. So thanks for the invitation, Charlene. Charlene asked me to speak about a program that we run at UWA in collaboration with all the other institutions across the country that you can see. It's a national program that's funded a year ago or so, and it's a CRE, it's the NHMC, Centre of Research Excellence in Emerging Infectious Diseases, so CREED. So I listed there the names of the investigators in Western Australia. That's David Smith, who runs microbiology, biology at Southwest in CREED 2. And Paul Effler, who's at the Department of Health, he runs, or he's in the Clinical Disease Division. And he's the, as you'll see, he's the representative of the Health Department, because this is a collaboration between Southwest, the Health Department, and UWA, and it's me. So just briefly, this is what the CREED has been set up to do. It has 3 different elements to it. And the first part is identifying and characterizing pathogen emergence and spread. And it's been set up to look at so-called exemplar pathogens, to look at different ways in which pathogens can be introduced into Western Australia or Australia. And we're looking at what happens in Western Australia with introduced human threats, infectious disease threats. And our emphasis is on 2 things, and there's a whole list of other things, but we don't have time to go into that. Vector-borne diseases, particularly dengue, Zika more recently, which we've been working with, and chikungunya, and respiratory infections as well, particularly influenza. So once we characterize what those infections are, and the emphasis is on genomics, whole genome analysis, hopefully, but we don't do whole genomes routinely, we get there after we identify the particular strains that we should do more extensively on. Then is to try to understand the selection and distribution of pressures driving evolution of those pathogens. And so to do that, we need to understand the pathogen and also the populations in which those viruses, that's my bias, I'm looking at viruses, nothing wrong with bacteria, and how they spread, how they're selected, where they come from, and then how they spread once they get here. And then that then becomes part of the public health response. Specifically, interventions that can target transmission of these viruses and the human behaviours, of course, that contribute to that. And then finally, the aim of the CREED is to then translate this into effective practice. So to develop policy around limiting the spread, first identifying, but then limiting the spread of these pathogens, and to then work with the community to try to control this. So ambitious, but we're starting in the first part, which is pathogen identification and characterization. So, probably don't know this, but many people from this part of the country like to go to Bali. This is where most of the travellers from this region go to, and we use these travellers to identify what's out in the region because they will bring it back. So mostly we just happen to work with people who've been to Bali on holiday. So 9 flights a day on average, a lot of travellers. Most of the infections they bring back, which are acquired overseas, are basically dengue or flu-borne illness. And there's a lot of it. So the map down there, or the graph down there shows these are dengue notifications in Western Australia over the last few years, and you can see basically there's this kind of cyclic pattern, which really, this indicates to us what's going on in Bali, particularly because the travellers who come from here, there's features of the cohort that we have now, and these are people that are in a pre-existing immunity. So we see a clear, well-defined single infection that tells us exactly what's going on over there. So Western Australia doesn't have regular identification of the mosquito vectors that transmit this virus and others, but they have been tracked at the airport just FYI over the last few years. So they're introduced on the aircraft, but they're not distributed widely as yet. This last slide, so very succinct. So to do the work, so this is the genomics and phylogenetic analysis that we're doing. This is an example of one of the 4 dengue viruses that's very predominant in the region, or recently predominant. And this red line here shows a new variant of this virus that we picked up in the last few years that's been brought in by travellers. Didn't exist in Jimba before, but we can see that. And in the period since we've identified this particular novel strain, we're able to see that it's still introduced into Western Australia along with another lineage that's now also dominant. So it's a kind of work we can do over time. So what we also do then is I've established a so-called traveller study where we then enrol individuals we get this data from and bleed them at regular intervals, and we're using this collection over time to then understand their immune response, their pathogen-specific immune response, to understand the disease process, why some people seem to get very sick and most people don't. So it's a protection mechanism and also a disease mechanism. So these are the things we're trying to figure out. So this is based initially on the genomic analysis and then finally the immune studies that then stem from that. Just as an example, this is from a Zika patient. Because we're able to follow these people over time, we can see that their immunity to Zika doesn't seem to last as long as we maybe assume. So this gives us interesting information on whether it's protective or not long term. And in these viruses at least, there is this problem of so-called immune enhancement where your second infection can actually be a lot worse than the primary infection. So these are the issues that we're trying to understand. So I think I'll just summarize it like that. And take any questions. So I'll just summarize by saying we are interested in hearing talks on translational work, but we're still some way from that. And what I'd like to hear more of is more seed funding, more support funds to get us to the point where we can then take some products out. Because there are a couple of interesting things about this kind of work, but we have to get to that point. So.
Thanks very much, Alison. If I could ask the questions on this one to be held over until the session at the end, I think that would be a good outcome. Our next speaker is from the Defence Materials Technology Centre. He's the COO there. It's Jim Arthur.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. It's a pleasure for me to be speaking today. And the Defence Material Technology Centre was set up about 9 years ago. And what we do is undertake collaborative R&D to create industry capability to meet the defence need or a national security need. So if this audience thinks about that, why would I be talking here today? Well, we've actually got a medical countermeasures program that operates in this space. We've actually got one project which is currently being funded here at the University of Western Australia, which is where we're taking. So things about our organisation. We would have probably 400 researchers spread across the country in different institutions working on our projects at any one time. We would do a bit over $30 million worth of R&D per year, and we're a company in our own right. We're not a public company, not for profit, funded by guarantee, got tax exemption. And how do we set up a program? What are the characteristics of one of our programs? First of all, we need to get 3 distinct things for a program to happen if we run. There has to be a defence need or a defence requirement. Often we, as DPC, go out and engage with defence extensively to work out what their requirements are in an R&D sense. Secondly, we need some credible industry capability. There's no point for us doing R&D and not having industry to deliver that to the defence customer. And thirdly, we need to have a credible research capability. elements like funding and things like that. So what do our projects look like within programs? We operate at TRL 3 to 7 range. People not familiar with TRLs, it's a maturity level of technology and within the research space. We don't do a really early stage research, although we do a PhD program, and because we can't engage industry satisfactorily at that level. And likewise at the higher TRL levels, or in 8 and 9, there's not much research left, and it's just a product development program to take technology to customers and industry to look after that. We need a balance in contributions. It's approximately a third government funded from defence, a third research funded through in-kind and cash contributions, and a third industry funded through in-kind contributions. That is what a typical program looks like in the space which we operate. We consider the outcomes of projects. We measure things like what's going to be the impact on the nation, how significant is it. We ourselves don't get a direct return. Our business model is based on repeat business, people coming back and wanting to work with us again. And we started off as an organisation which looked at materials research and engineering and manufacturing. That's how we got our name. But we've had a natural progression from that, and that's why we've started to move into the spaces like medical countermeasures, and we're just standing up a new program now in high altitude space sensors. So it's moving through time, but we're not involved in things like cyber security and a whole range of other good research areas, but it's not in the space which we've got capability. So our partners, our industry partners are up here. Some of these you will know, and some of them are large multinationals, some of them are one or two people SMEs. But these are the people who have joined up as participants to our organisation. There are a number of other industry players that we work with, but they haven't joined us as partners, so not on this slide. And finally, our research partners. We've got a range of universities, and University of Western Australia is on that slide. But we've also got other players like CSIRO, ANSTO, and the Defence and Science Technology Group, and the Department of Defence. So it's these organisations which are doing the research for us. We do not employ any of our own researchers to do the research. So, thank you.
Time for a couple of questions. If people would be predisposed to asking one or more. I have one because it reflects a particular interest of my own organisation, and that was cyber security. You said that you weren't particularly focused on that, but there are, we heard earlier of the importance of cyber security in defence-related activities. Do you see that being part of the portfolio over time?
In the short term, I don't see it being in our portfolio. Longer term, who knows? I wouldn't have said medical countermeasures was going to be in our portfolio 3 years ago, but it is now. And groups like the Defence Science and Technology Group have got an extensive research program in that space, and there's a cooperative research centre that operates in that space. And I think it's probably they who are taking the lead on it at the moment, it's not us.
Yeah, I just keep getting told about there's many parallels between things happening in infectious diseases and things happening in cyber. Anyway, any other questions or comments? May I also remind people the opportunity to provide comments via Twitter is there, and I'll be presented, I think, with some more envelopes to recognise those contributors. No more comments? Well, this is an opportunity then to introduce Jonathan Karapetis. Now, I think almost everyone will know Jonathan as the director of the Telethon Kids Institute. And Jonathan, the floor is yours. Pretty fine.
Thank you. Great to be here. I'm sorry I couldn't be here earlier. There are a few people in the audience who are from the Institute, many others who are friends and collaborators of the Institute. Deb Strickland down here is one of the heads of our research focus areas on my leadership team. Tom Snelling is the head of our West Farmers Centre for Vaccines and Infectious Diseases, also on the leadership team, and Sam manages Tom and the centre over the corner. And I think both of them are both actually of the people on the leadership team are great exemplars of the way the Institute's trying to head in terms of a much more collaborative approach to doing our research. So very quickly, who are we? Where are we? We're up in Subiaco. Where will we be very soon? In the lead-free, asbestos-free Royal Perth Children's Hospital. And we'll be moving there probably early next year. Hopefully the hospital itself will be open by then. And we'll be on the top 2 floors of the northern end. So that will be the research facility, and it will be great to be co-located with so many other organisations on the QE2 site. So we have been around for 28 years, 27 years thereabouts. As you see there, we've got more than 500 staff and students, probably about 550 now. And what I really wanted to focus on were these things called research focus areas. We set up a new structure a few years ago, which was really built around a desire to both have a much more outcomes-oriented approach, so to really be focused on making sure our research makes a difference to the health of kids and families, but also a much more collaborative approach. And we deliberately, therefore, set up something which became, I think, quite confusing for our researchers, but we deliberately wanted to confuse them by creating these things called research focus areas. And when we set them up, they were not divisions, they weren't themes, they were networks. And so people didn't belong to a research focus area. That just described what we did, not who we are. And we asked people to think about, in fact, whether they could be part of all the research focus areas. And we set up mechanisms to make sure that people collaborated across these focus areas, and that the focus areas themselves also connected broadly with the community and with other collaborators. And people like Deb can give you really good examples of how that functioned. These are now, we've now evolved them into being more structural. And so Aboriginal health, brain and behaviour, chronic severe diseases, early environment, tries to encompass the enormous breadth of what we do. We do pretty much everything when it relates to child health. That's a wonderful strength, because it also means that in addition to the diversity of topics we cover, the diversity of skill sets is enormous, from people who really are doing high-level discovery research in the laboratory, through to people who are out there collecting data in the field, people who are doing clinical trials, and people who are analysing big data on mental health, data linkage, you name it. And so that's a wonderful strength. It's also a challenge to make sure that we can do what we do excellently, and that's one of the challenges that people like Deb and Tom have, to make sure that we really deliver some great work. And we've got a number of research highlights. I really, for the consideration of time, I'm not going to focus on these, but what we're trying to do also is do a much better job of measuring the impact of our research. We're trying to move beyond traditional academic metrics. We're not wanting to ignore them. We absolutely still rely on publications and grants. But our strategy is built around making a difference. And so what we're trying to do is to demonstrate through a new tool that we're developing, a research impact framework, how we can deliver on what we said we're going to do. And that's to point out that we've got this flash building here, and that will still be ours, and we're still trying to look at great, interesting ways to use that facility, including things that we can do, as well as make it available to others. And so that may be of interest to some of you in this room, because it is a wonderful facility that has laboratory capacity, it has an animal facility, as well as great clinical suites and office suites. But this is where we will be in the future. And so, sorry, Kevin. Stole your thunder. I guess what I really want to say is the Institute is very much set up to try and be highly collaborative, outcomes focused, but really trying to really value the link between discovery research and translational research. And groups like the West Farmer Centre for Vaccines and Infectious Diseases, the collaboration, it's all about early childhood. They're about linking ourselves with a whole lot of other organisations, because we know that gone are the days where individuals and individual institutions indeed can try and do things themselves. I'm going to stop there. Thank you,
I'm going to give you a question that you should feel free to duck, and that is, can you comment on the role of microbes in the lead problem in drinking water?
Look, the great thing is that I get to watch the stuff about the lead and the drinking water from a distance and just kind of enjoy the show, because it's not my problem. It will be my problem if there's still lead in the water. The answer is I've not heard anyone talk about microbes. I've only just talked about leaching of lead from brass fittings. But sure some of you know much more about it than I do.
Yeah, well, you won't find it from me. I'm just trying to quote from a media article, which is probably going to be misleading, if nothing else. Jonathan, a number of the challenges that the Telethon Institute has faced in terms of infectious diseases challenges tend to be prevalent in both Indigenous and in non-Indigenous populations. What do you see as the priorities that you would like the Telethon Institute to tackle over the next 5 years?
When it comes to infectious diseases, the guy sitting here is the one to talk to, Tom Snelling. He heads up the West Island Centre. I guess we focus very much on Aboriginal health as a major overarching priority. In fact, within the Aboriginal health research focus area, there are no research teams because we want it to be everybody's business. And so everybody throughout the Institute is asked to think about how they can contribute to infectious diseases in Aboriginal health, for example. And one of those approaches is to make sure that there's better use of existing vaccines, as well as looking at developing new vaccines. But for someone like me who works in the field of group-based cryptococcal diseases and rheumatic fever, we also recognise that one of the major advances are going to be related to environment, to the primordial prevention of infectious diseases, to improved housing, to improved education. And so we don't shy away from really difficult approaches to problems like infectious diseases. But the challenges that we deal with in terms of infectious diseases are just like anyone does, whether it's in child health or not, and it's related to antimicrobial resistance, emergence of new pathogens, tropical health and the emerging need to deal with the changes, for example, of climate change. The list goes on. We have work on ear diseases, on severe diseases, on group-based streptococcal infections, pneumonia. That's our problem as we try and do it all.
Well, with some 550 people, staff and students there, you've got a great workforce to do it. Thanks, Rob. And now, he's been waiting, I'm sure, to take the stage. The final speaker in the session and for the afternoon, apart from some comments I'll be making at the end, is Kevin Fager, who's an Associate Professor at UWA. He's listed here as with MTP Connect, and I think that's what we'll be hearing about. But I think one of the last times I saw Kevin, he was the first amongst equals at the 40 over 40.
Okay, thank you very much. And rather than stealing my thunder, you gave me a wonderful segue there, Jonathan, so thank you for that. I have many hats, and that's part of why I'm in this role. I'm actually an NHMRC fellow, so very much an academic. I run a pharmacology laboratory at the Helicobacter Institute of Medical Research. But as well as that, I'm actually Chief Study Advisor at Dimerix Limited, and I was CSO for many years, from 2008 to 2014. So I'm one of the few people that have actually experienced the journey, should we call it, of getting something translated out of a research environment from very fundamental research right the way through to phase 2 clinical trials. And what I want to do now is help other people go through that same journey. So I'd like to introduce something called Accelerating Australia. This is this. So 19 consortium members currently are consisting of this group here. So we have diversity, and that's the key to this. One of the issues I find all the time is that we're either talking as academics in a university setting, or we're talking as business people. And it's very rare that we actually understand each other's language. And often people say to me, translation is a strange term for translating medical research, because translation is about language. But actually, I think it's all about language. I think it's about understanding what those two worlds think, how they think, and how they actually do their business. So we have many universities here from across the country. We have medical research institutes. We have biotech. We have providers of healthcare and St John of God, and we have providers of training facilities. Just to sort of illustrate that a bit more clearly, we can actually see this with this node diagram. This is an initiative that came out of Western Australia, very much built on the back of the WHTN, the wonderful work that everybody in this room has largely done, led most recently by John Chalice, to actually build WHTN, and that's a collaborative network where we all work together, not in competition but in collaboration, and that's the theme of today. Building around that and on that, with Sarah as the focal point here and Spark Collab and Kath alluded to that earlier, CERES, as a Centre for Entrepreneurial Research and Innovation, is a fabulous hub because it is neutral. It is not within any particular entity. So every university, every institute is happy to go there and say, we are there underneath the prison. It's a wonderful place where we can all come together. And since this started, I've had nothing but wonderful response from everybody. Everybody I've engaged in this process has really wanted to jump on board. And this illustrates just a snapshot of that. So we have all of the four public universities. We have 5 medical research institutes, St John of God, and 3 biotechs. Around that, as I'll show you in a moment, we have a huge network as well. We've linked in with Adelaide, Sydney and UTS in New South Wales, and Monash in Victoria. And that is now growing. Since we've started this collaborations network, and we've got this funding from MTU Connect, we're one of the 14 projects that was funded in the last round. So this is back at the federal level. We are actually getting many people engaging now, and I'm having meetings in Melbourne next week where St Vincent's, RMIT, are coming on board. I'm talking to Macquarie, I'm talking to Illawarra. Lots of people are now interested in building on this. And the great thing about Accelerate Australia is that as a network, it doesn't run programs itself. What we do actually is facilitate the running of programs. We're backing Spark Collab, we're backing CERE, we're backing other initiatives in Monash and in Sydney. The idea is to actually be the lubricant of the system, to actually make everything work. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There are many, many ways that people can translate their research. There are many programs. We know about LISA now. Everybody is now trying to accelerate research out of the universities. But how do you do that? There are many programs, there are many incubators. If you Google now incubators, accelerators and actuators in Australia, you will find many different offerings. What is the difference? Which one do you go to? So what we're trying to do is understand that. Understand how they all have nuances, they have niches, they have skill sets, and understand how we can help each of those groups. And if we can't do it as a group, so Australia will happily reference other groups, like Bridge Program. So if you want to understand about large pharma, go on the Bridge Program. If you want to understand about investing with biotech, Oz Biotech have a program. There are many different ways that we can actually engage through the ecosystem and help each other understand. Because a lot of what we think about is about funding, and funding is important. But I'll also say the network, the mentoring, the understanding of the process is incredibly important. We need to understand clinical questions, so we need to engage with the Department of Health, with St John of God, for example, and the community. We need to understand the end user and the needs. We need to understand industry questions. This is an industry growth centre that's backing us, so it's an industry focus. So large pharma, medtech, biotechs, how does this process work? How can we learn from these people that have gone through the journey? Health economics is incredibly important. Understanding the health benefits in terms of the economic impact. Clinical trials, Lineo, here we go. Fabulous resource we have here in West Australia, the whole country. Regulatory affairs, intellectual property, venture capital, medicinal chemistry, financial services. I can't fit anything else on the slide. What that illustrates is that there are a huge number of people we need to help us move from the academic environment to translate our research. We need seed funding, yes, but we also need to know how to do it. A lot of the questions that have come through today, how do I translate my research out of the institution? You won't, we have wonderful people in tech transfer offices, but they're one or two people. We actually need a huge number of people that have experience across a huge number of areas, and we need to provide a setting where you can actually access those skill sets. And that's what we do. We actually have people, if people come to us as a consortium member, we can actually provide one-on-one mentorship to actually help you go down that path and down that journey. So that's the picture of Accelerating Australia. It is incredibly well developed here in Western Australia. We are building it around the country from here. We're working with governments. Love to see Perth and state government here. We're working with everybody because this isn't about competition across the sector at all. It's about working as a sector in the medical research institutes and the universities, coming together as a sector and then going to government to enable government to interact with us as an entire sector. And I think it's a wonderful journey, and I hope you can join me on it. So thank you very much.
If I could just draw you out very quickly on one aspect. understand that one of the emphases in the programs that you're fostering is in instilling the right skills in the certified degree students. Can you expand a bit on this?
Absolutely. So this is coming at multiple levels. In fact, we've just got an Industrial Transformation Training Centre being funded by ASI 2 days ago. So that's $13.1 million, plus over $600,000 worth of match funding from universities and companies. That is in collaboration with Monash in Melbourne. And so now we have Monash in Melbourne coming to us in Western Australia saying, can you please collaborate with us because you are doing language like this. So that is coming in at a PhD postdoc level. And then beyond that, we have Spark Collab, who are running 6-month courses to actually bring together clinicians, scientists, business people, engineers, to run a 6-month program where they actually go in, find out their clinical needs, and actually develop resolutions that are met clinical needs. We have Sari running boot camps to upskill people over a couple of days, and then proof of concept, and then going through into side courses. There's many different ways we can get to this. There are different levels of that pipeline.
Thanks, Kevin. I think we certainly support your commitment to getting these skills developed very early on in one's career. Thanks, Kevin. So that brings to a close our formal presentations, but I'll jump right to the dot point at the end of my notes here and indicate that there are some facilities elsewhere in the club where people can continue the discussions over a refreshment or two. So, the first task I have is, I understand, to pull a card out of this bowl and in no particular distance. It's in a Alfred. Alfred is one. There are half a dozen other cards. Hard-working Alfred too, for that matter. Now there are some additional winners of the Twitter monitoring staff. There are 3 gift vouchers here. Oh, sorry, this is the gift voucher for the walk prize. Sorry about that. I got this audio again. 2 gift vouchers. Again, we thank Linear Clinical Research for sponsoring these. The one for a retweet for Peter, and one for a very engaging question, Kate McKenzie. May I ask someone to just see? I think we have had a real banquet of knowledge, information, opportunity presented to us this afternoon. There are a couple of themes that emerge. They tend to be more general statements, but I think to a degree we have seen a really rich diversity of research and its translation in infectious diseases and also more broadly in health and medical research. And that is not unreasonable that it's going to be very hard to stop thinking about the principles of discovery and translation at a particular discipline boundary. I think we've also seen many, many opportunities for people in the room tonight and those that we know of outside that might be able to participate in collaborative research and in its translation. If you are wanting to review what has been presented today, I think we can direct people to the pens that are in the gift packs that have got the USB stitched part of them that should have information. And I think also, Josephine, you were saying that there will be some footage available via the website over the next few weeks. And so I think it'll be, keep your eye on that, and also revisit the Twitter sites for, Twitter feeds for comments and replies. I would, on behalf of everyone, like to extend our thanks to the Ashdale Secondary College, the teachers Lisa Aitken and Alexandra Meyer, and also the students for all their hard work. I think we have a small offering for someone who might like to step forward. Oh, if you wouldn't mind, photography and communications, again, will be available through the website and elsewhere, I suspect. So these sorts of activities are never possible without the hard work of a number of people. The people I'd like to especially acknowledge start with Charlene Kaler, because Charlene, the Deputy Director of the Marshall Centre, I think is the one who successfully applied to UWA for a research collaboration grant that has contributed towards making this event possible. Charlene, thank you for that. Thank you to UWA too for their support. That's been terrific. A number of other people have been indispensable in bringing it all together. Alina Spina, Sharon Thompson, John Cordova, Jaden Rogers and the team at Linear Clinical Research have really worked hard to make today's event a success. And again, another thank you to Linear for its sponsorship. But as is often typical of when you get given a set of notes about who has done all the work, the person who actually writes the notes and has done a lot of the work omits herself in this instance. So Josephine Muir, thank you very much for your leadership in bringing all of this together. It's been a terrific afternoon. On behalf of everyone, thank you. Now the request is in order to make sure that we can improve on the format, because something can always be improved no matter how successful. We'd be interested in getting your feedback. Now in those little gift packs there is a fairly brief evaluation form or survey, and if you're comfortable in completing it and leaving it at the registration desk, on the table, I'm sorry, leaving it at the registration desk and probably leaving it along with the name tags that can be recycled. That would be good. So again, just to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, if you would like to keep the conversation going, I don't know how long we can persist in this room. I don't know if the staff have got the format for some other event, but if not here, then in some of the adjacent bars and so on, there is the opportunity to relax and forge some of those very concrete partnerships and collaborations that we'll hope will come out of the afternoon. Thanks for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Cheers.